One thing about God is that he meets people where they are. He allows the great controversy to run its course. And as we learned during that same presentation, and as we know, God does not generally work miracles except for specific instances for his glory. He allows the issues of the great controversy to run their course. That's fact number one. Now, let us go back to the days of Israel when they had a scourge that was prevalent then. It's not a big problem today, but it was prevalent then. And it was a theocracy, so God was in charge. And let us see what instructions God gave. And people who like to quickly talk about faith without understanding these relations will have to answer my questions when I ask them if God was teaching Moses and Israel a denial of faith. People are quick to use that term without understanding how God operates in a sinful world, meeting his people. So open your Bibles with me, and I would like you to take time and read Leviticus 12, 13, 14, and 15, all those chapters. When you get a chance, the whole chapters. But we're going to look at a section here. The big scourge in those times in ancient Israel was leprosy. And you're going to see in these chapters the same instructions: washing and social distancing, and not coming into the congregation, and not coming into camps. And that was a theocracy, and God was in control. And let me tell you something, anybody who told God, I don't mind you, I have faith to let the leper come and sit outside of me, Moses had instructions to take them out of the camp and stone them. It was a theocracy. In other words, don't confuse issues of the health of a community in a sinful, fallen world, mixing it up with issues of faith, not understanding how God operates. Okay? Look at Leviticus, therefore. See chapter 13, laws about leprosy, Leviticus 13. And come right down now to that same chapter, Leviticus 13, the last three verses, 44, 45, and 46. Leviticus 13, 44, 45, and 46. A theocracy and God-given directions. He is a leprous man. He is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him utterly unclean. The plague is in his head, as that particular type of leprosy. And the leper in whom the plague is, his clothes shall be rent, his head bare. He shall put a covering upon his upper lip and shall cry, unclean, unclean. All the days wherein the plague shall be in him, he shall be defiled, he is unclean. He shall dwell alone outside the camp, shall be his habitation, distancing. The amazing thing about this is that the only people that had these principles back then were the Israelites, because don't forget, the world didn't know anything about microbiology and viruses and bacteria. God met his people where they were, okay? And was giving them instructions that the other nations didn't have against infectious diseases. What a God, and how he meets his people where they are. So the argument that it was a theocracy and God was in control, so God should heal everybody and nobody should catch anything, is shown to be absurd, because God was given instructions to protect his people in a sinful, fallen world. He isn't working miracles willy-nilly like that. Whenever he worked miracles in the days of Jesus, it was for a specific purpose to prove the divinity of Christ against the hard-hearted Pharisees. Hold your questions till I'm finished. And I want people to understand this distinction. And I'm going to give some important examples. So this man, here was leprosy, an epidemic. And God gave instructions. The people who have the disease should dwell alone, shouldn't come into their family, the tent, or the church. This was God speaking and giving the instructions. Was God teaching Moses a denial of faith? No, the deeper issues of the great controversy that we should know and should not be caught up in the folly that I hear going around even in America. You have Americans saying that the regulation not to gather is against the First Amendment. Nonsense. It is a civil regulation aimed at protecting the population, and churches should comply. It has nothing to do with interfering with your faith and worship. You can stream your worship and stream your faith. It is a regulation to protect citizens from a highly infectious disease, and churches should comply with the civil regulation because it is not interfering with faith and worship. All that we went through here for 6 months, ending in a camp book. And when we present the third angel's message, and we don't have these things clear, we will confound ourselves and bring reproach upon the cause of God. So here's a theocracy. Here is Israel. And God said that man has to live alone. He can't come into his family, can't come into the congregation. Was that a denial of anybody's faith? No. And suppose somebody in the congregation said, well, Moses, you don't have any faith, so that man with the leprosy out there going and bring him in the church to sit down beside me. What would God think of that? Oh dear. But God is not finished. His very garment had to be burnt in fire. Burnt in fire. You're dealing with infectious diseases in a sinful world, and his garment had to be burnt with fire. So read these chapters when you have a chance before you jump to conclusions that are not based on the word, but based on a definition of faith that is not in the word. The same Jesus that was on earth, Satan came to him quoting a word. If you jump down from here, the word says God will send his angels. Jesus said, get behind me, Satan. You don't know the difference between presumption and genuine faith. But look at it. We're not finished yet. Look at burn it with verse 57. Verse 57. And if it appears still in the garment, or either in the wart, or in the woof, or in anything of the skin, it is a spreading plague. Thou shalt burn that wherein the plague is with fire. Verse 58, and the garment, either wart or woof, or whatsoever thing of skin it be, thou shalt wash. If the plague be departed from it, then it shall be washed a second time and be clean. So notice washing and social distancing Moses to the children of Israel at a time of a plague back then. It took us in these modern times until Robert Koch discovered microbiology in the 1800s, but God gave these principles to his people before they understood microbiology, proving that this book, the Bible, is God-inspired and that there's a God. But not only in leprosy, Leviticus 15, unclean discharges from the body. Leviticus 15. And the Lord spake unto Moses, verse 1 of Leviticus 15, unto Aaron, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when any man hath a running issue out of his flesh, because of his flesh, he is unclean. And this shall be his uncleanness in this issue, whether his flesh run with the issue, or his flesh be stopped from the issue, it is his uncleanness. And verse 4, every bed he lie down on, every place he sit down on is unclean. Whoever touch of it is unclean. He must wash, verse 5, shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean till even, has to be separate from till evening. And then when he's clean and the priest diagnoses his cleanness, he can come back in. These are health directions under theocracy, when everybody belongs to God, let alone a world like we live in, and we recommend these health instructions. Verse 8, and if he that hath the issue spit upon him, that is clean, then he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean till even. Notice these principles: distancing, cleanness, separation, not mingling. This was the people of God. You couldn't go in the sanctuary. Verse 10, and whosoever toucheth anything that was under him shall be unclean till evening. And he that beareth any of those things shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean till evening. This is God. So washing, distancing, all of this is hygiene. We haven't even gone to the spirit of prophecy, where these things are even expanded upon in our modern times. So, the civil government is given by God, Romans 13, the permission to protect citizens in health and other areas, punishment of crime and so forth. And we went through these things in detail for 6 months in 2018. So suppose, I can give an example to show how ridiculous things people can reason. The government says, for example, that every person driving should have a car insurance. Go and tell the government, I have faith that I will never get into an accident. I don't need a car insurance. Not only will the government view you as fanatic and bring reproach upon the faith you profess, but you're talking nonsense. Because however much you believe in God, that does not mean you can't get in an accident with another man hitting you. And this is the principles that Ellen White wrote down when we studied at camp. Time and chance happen after them all. Of course, nobody's denying that God protects his people, but God was also protecting ancient Israel, but they had leprosy. And he gave them laws of separation. So when I hear people saying that when the government says don't assemble in more than 100 quantity, and therefore it affects everything, that is interfering with worship and faith, I'm saying clearly that those conclusions are wrong. I don't care who they are saying these things. Government has the right to protect the citizens. And if government says no assemblies above 100, it may soon come down to 50, 10 or not, the church should cooperate. It is not interfering with the church's faith or worship. We can stream, we can meet in groups, we can even singly do a Zoom. But it is a matter of protecting the society, and the church should be foremost in cooperating with civil regulations to protect fellow human beings, and not go off on extreme fanaticism, talking things that really have no foundation in the word, only a feeling. I'm very straight with this, because I see men on the YouTube and in America defying the government's order and thinking and calling, saying that it is God's will. And they haven't obviously read Leviticus, when there was a pandemic back then and God separated. Now, therefore, frequent washing, notice there in Moses, distancing, even the clothes. Now, we have a directive that even when you get home on evenings, on a day out, in a certain circumstance like this, get those clothes washed. These are directives from God to Israel at that time. We can now apply to ourselves. And even when Jesus healed the leper, Jesus then said, well, I am in charge here. You don't have to go anybody. Just go and show yourself to the authority and let the civil authority declare that you are fit. Notice the importance of Romans 13 and these studies that we went through. So to say that if the government brings down the numbers to a certain number, that is interfering with religious liberty is not true. And those views will only lead to fanaticism and extremism.